George Clooney and Brad Pitt's new movie Wolves is on Apple TV Plus September 27th.
That's where I want you to be now.
So if you want to see George Clooney and Brad Pitt, go to Apple TV Plus.
You got to start the story there.
Or if you want to see Brad Pitt and George Clooney, go to Apple TV Plus.
I am enjoying the show.
And if you want to see their new movie Wolves,
You can't do it, I'm going to help you out. I can do it, so do it.
definitely go to Apple TV Plus.
Admit it, it's cool. Okay, fine, it was very cool.
Wolves, streaming September 27th on Apple TV Plus. Rated R.
When it comes to towing, seeing is believing. That's why Chevy Truck's advanced camera technology offers up to 8 available cameras for 14 unique views, so you can focus on the view that really matters. Chevrolet, together let's drive. Learn more about Chevy Trucks at Chevy.com. Safety or driver assistance features are no substitute for the driver's responsibility to operate the vehicle in a safe manner. Read the Vehicle Owner's Manual for important feature limitations and information.
Hey Eagles fans, this is Chris Franco from NJ Advanced Media, and welcome to the No-Huddle Show podcast, the show where we discuss all things related to the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, before we begin, I want to remind you that you can read our content on NJ.com/Eagles, and be sure to bookmark that to get the latest Eagles news and analysis. Today, I'm once again joined by my No-Huddle Show co-hosts Bob Brookover and Cayden Steele. Well, the Eagles had their home opener against the Atlanta Falcons on Monday night, and they basically snatched the loss from the jaws of victory, losing 22-21, and the record now stands at 1-1. We'll get to that more in a bit in a sec, but first off, Bob, Cayden, how are you guys doing today?
Go ahead, Cayden. You go first.
I'm doing good. Probably better than Eagles fans and other people out there that are kind of panicking about the team right now. But it is week 3 already, which is crazy. I mean, we're almost 2 weeks from the bye week already, which is weird. But doing well, and I'm excited to cover this week and to see how this team rebounds or not rebounds against what looks to be a really good Saints team. So it should be definitely interesting, and it's a true measuring stick. So I'm excited to see what's going to happen.
Yeah, I too am excited to be here with you, Chris. I think one of your best scripts ever. We're looking at, we're going to cover in this show, and I can't wait to go over it. Let's get started.
I don't know where the line came from, but I noticed I've heard also like that stuff ain't true, and I edited that last stuff for something else with the script part. But we'll go into other stuff right now. We're going to go into our opening drive question, and there were 2 moments I thought that were really stood out and could have directly contributed to the outcome. Well, actually did directly contribute to the outcome of the game. The first one was when the Eagles went for it in the first quarter. They decided they were within field goal range. They decided, you know what, Nick Sirianni, let's go for it on 4th and 4, and they didn't pick it up. And then again later on in the fourth quarter, late there, where it was 3rd and 3, and Nick Sirianni and Kellen Moore, what have you, depending who called the play, what have you, and not try to, quote, stir stuff up, as was mentioned during the post-game press conference. But, yeah, they decided to call a pass play and to Saquon Barkley, and Barkley dropped it. On the ensuing drive, the Falcons, Kirk Cousins picked apart the defense, leading to the go-ahead touchdown, the eventual game winner. So I'm going to start with Bob and then go to Cayden. Do you agree the decisions that the Eagles made to go for it in the first, and then later to throw the ball in the fourth, do you agree they were the right choices?
Well, I'm going to go with you on this first one because you were the one who said in real time on the 4th and 4, take the points before they went for it on 4th and 4, Chris. I was still in the midst of finishing up my Nick Foles story, and you were right. I mean, take the points. And here's why I think the analytics say otherwise. I admit to not being an analytics expert, but to me, the percentages also say teams on 4th and 4 make it less than 50% of the time. The Eagles have earned the right anytime they have a 4th and 1 on the other side of on the opponent's side of the field. I don't care what quarter it is, what the time is, unless you're going to kick a field goal to go up 9 points, you can always go for it. 9 points with whatever a minute left. But they can always go for it on the tush push, 4th and 1. But this is 4th and 4. Less than 50% of the time you make it. They didn't make it. There's a lot of things we could dissect there. Jalen, who I thought played a great game other than his late interception, didn't make a great pass to Dallas Goedert there. Didn't really give him a chance, but he was under some pressure. But hey, those things happen. That's nitpicking at Jalen's game, and enough people do that. And then if you go to the 3rd and 3, I wanted them to run there for this reason, and Nick Sirianni went over this. I thought for way too long because we're, at this point it's more about the Saints than what the game they gave away to the Falcons. But he talked about he went over and he had his analytics department go over. Well, what should you do here? And then he talked about the field goal. But what he didn't talk about was the time on the clock. If you got a minute 40 left, when the play goes off, minute 46, you run the ball, whatever is the result of it. Let's say they don't make it. Let's say they get 0 yards. Let's say they lose a yard, whatever. 4 or 5 seconds go off the clock. You let the clock tick down to almost a minute left. You kick the field goal. Now you're under a minute left in the game. I'm not an analytics expert, but I do know this. I know the Falcons went down the field really fast and scored in 65 seconds. But I also know that a minute is 60 seconds. So maybe they don't score if they have less than a minute to do so, because the pressure gets ramped up there too. The there's no doubt about it. The Eagles defense did a disgraceful job on that drive. The players are to blame a lot, but I didn't like either one of those decisions when I look back at it.
All right, cool. What do you think, Cayden?
Yeah, I agree with the early decision that what you said, Chris. During the game that they should have took the points, because my thought process at the time was that Atlanta, because of Kirk Cousins still kind of being a little, not sure of himself on the Achilles, weren't going to be putting up 30 points. And look, the Eagles defense gave up that big drive at the end of the game, but before then they only gave up 15 points. So I thought it was a good opportunity to take those points. And if you did, you look at the end of the game, it's a totally different situation where you could take the field goal and you're up and the game's pretty much over. At the time, the Eagles wanted to be aggressive, which I can't, fault them for necessarily always, because and then they're aggressive at the end of the game. And, with the Saquon decision, I thought it was a better choice to run the ball and try to chew the clock and make Atlanta, pretty much run the clock. If you're going to give the ball back to Atlanta in that situation, if he doesn't pick it up, like Bob said, they had barely any time on the clock, but he gave him a ton of time. But when kind of thinking about it the last few days, I'm actually fine with it more than I was then, because in all reality, Saquon catches the ball, the game's probably over, and it wasn't good execution. He ended up dropping a pass that you would think he would catch 9 times out of 10. But I have more of a problem of if you're going to be aggressive in that situation, you want to put away Atlanta, and that's the intention with that play, is to pick up a first down. Pick up a touchdown maybe if he catches that ball. I would prefer for them to keep on being aggressive. So I would have gone for it on 4th down instead of settling for the field goal. I think that's where my mind has changed. And I guess you can't really predict what the defense is necessarily going to do, but we saw the entire game. They didn't get any pass rush, and you gave Kirk Cousins, and who is a little more immobile currently, but he's still Kirk Cousins when you give him time in the pocket with, a minute 39 left or whatever was left on the clock there. And it was too much time. And so my thing is, in those situations and with Sirianni making some of them, if you're going to be aggressive, stay with being aggressive. Don't be aggressive, then be conservative. I get the whole, from 4th and 3 and 4th and 4, a lot of teams aren't going for it in those situations and forming an offense. And Sirianni explained that yesterday, and I get some of the logic behind that, but also I feel like some of it has to be a feel thing. And I'm not sure, that defense didn't look like it believed in itself, and maybe Sirianni had more confidence in it than what it looked like from their perspective. But I would have stayed with being aggressive in that moment and try to put away the Falcons. it didn't work. I mean, I don't think it's the worst decision in the world, but I think you have to be a little consistent with those decisions. And I guess that's the one area where my mind's kind of changed.
All right, good stuff, guys. Good stuff. And you both mentioned this during that last drive, especially. And it was very noticeable throughout the whole entire game. It's the second week now that the pass rush has failed to consistently get a pressure on a quarterback, and especially with Kirk Cousins mentioned with the Achilles injury, he's being a statue back there, and they still weren't able to consistently get pressure on him. Now, Bryce Huff still doesn't have a pressure, and he probably needs to get his cleats checked because of the amount of sliding he's been doing the last couple of weeks in terms of not getting his footing down, and just overall has been kind of questioning, like looking at signing as well too. And when you look at this, Cayden, I'll start with you, Cayden, and then go to Bob. What can or should Vic Fangio do to fix this?
Yeah, well, the first thing is that, with Vic Fangio, this is a tough situation, right? Because Bryce Huff, who I thought would be significantly better than what he is currently, I thought it was a promising signing. He was a really talented player with the Jets. I get he was a part-time player, but he's one of the most efficient pass rushers in the league, and I didn't think he would lose that. There was a chance I thought that maybe he would struggle against the run, which he definitely has. But I thought the pass rush juice would still be there. And some reason through 2 weeks, it hasn't been there. I mean, it just he talked about after the game that he needs to improve his arsenal and do more, bull rushes and speed to power. And it just seems like Bryce is very limited just to speed rushes right now. And he's not playing with a ton of physicality. And it's odd. I mean, I didn't think it would be this way. I thought it was just a promising signing, but it's only 2 weeks and you paid the guy, $17 million a year. So I don't think Vic can throw him on the bench. And because of the financial reasonings, you're invested in this guy. 2, you don't really have many options behind him. I mean, Nolan Smith hasn't played very well. We saw him get chip blocked by Bijan Robinson flying to the ground. I'm sure, that was, it was a good block by Bijan, but I mean, overall, it just kind of speaks to what Nolan Smith, the year's been, what his career's been so far. He's been overpowered and hasn't been very impactful. I mean, Josh Sweat hasn't shown up very much. He's had an occasional pressure here or there, or at least it looks like he's registering a pressure, but he still hasn't gotten a sack and still hasn't been overly impressive. And right now, your best pass rusher might be 36-year-old Brandon Graham. So Vic Fangio, and the big thing is everyone's talked about blitzing, and he hasn't blitzed a ton. I mean, he doesn't necessarily want to, I don't think. He would probably much rather prefer to have 4 get to the quarterback, and the interior hasn't been amazing either. So this is a mess for Vic Fangio. I think if I had to take a guess, I think he will continue to probably be a little bit, I don't want to say stubborn, but I think he'll stick to his guns and hope that 4 people can get to the quarterback. But it's probably not going to, that probably wouldn't be the right decision. So maybe you move Brandon Graham even more inside on passing rush downs. It looks like for a guy his age that we all kind of wrote him off that this is a year that everyone's going to just celebrate his retirement. It still looks like he has some juice left. So maybe that's one way. You move Brandon Graham inside a little more on passing downs, even more than they already do, to try to spark something. Or, I mean, you try to blitz more. I mean, we talked about it in the entire training camp, and it's a big discussion with Zach Bond and being a former edge rusher, and Devin White, who obviously doesn't have a role in this team anymore, but Nakobe Dean as well. These guys that can, provide some pass rush, and that might be the best way, but then it can burn you as well. We saw that on that touchdown with Darnell Mooney on Chauncey Gardner-Johnson when they sent blitz. And now if you go down to New Orleans, a guy Derek Carr, who's seen a lot of different defenses in the league, and he's going to know the blitz is coming. He could pick you apart. So I'm not really sure. I mean, the honest truth into it is that Vic Fangio, I mean, he can only do so much. These pass rushers just have to step up. And I don't want to say it's over, for Bryce Huff, but it hasn't looked good. And Josh Sweat, since the middle of last season, has significantly regressed. So these guys that have been quality pass rushers in the league before somehow have to come back to being that again. And they haven't been like that. I mean, so it's Fangio could try some things, but it's truly up to the players how good this pass rusher is going to be. And right now, it's a mess, and it's a cause for concern for sure. I mean, if they don't get it fixed, I don't think this team's going to be very good.
Oh, Bob, how do they fix this pass rush?
Well, I'm gonna give some good news to Bryce Huff. According to Pro Football Focus, he does have 2 pressures, but I can honestly say I don't remember them. But I do know he had 67 pressures last year, according to Pro Football Focus, which was just one fewer than having played a lot fewer snaps than Hassan Reddick. It was only one fewer pressure, and he had 10 sacks last year. That's last year. Nobody in Philadelphia cares about that anymore. They want to see him produce right now, and he hasn't. He's not alone. Josh Sweat also has some interesting stats because I thought he played a pretty good game against Green Bay. And then, according to Pro Football Focus, he had 6 pressures last week and has 10 for the season and 3 quarterback hits, 7 hurries total. Cayden made a great point about Brandon Graham. He's looked better than anybody. It'll be interesting to see if Vic tries to shake things up this week by maybe activating Jelix Hunt and just seeing, hey, what we have there. Maybe, just shaking up for the sake of shaking things up. Let these guys know you need to produce more. But when we talk about the pass rush, we also need to talk about Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis and those guys in the middle. Milton Williams got the only sack last week and played a good game. Milton Williams and Thomas Booker actually probably played better than Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis. Now, I do want to say this in defense of those two guys. They were going against an offensive line that is really good and recognized as really good, and I'm not sure it gets enough credit for being really good. The Saints' offensive line was not supposed to be very good. PFF had them rated 31st out of 32 teams coming in, but Derek Carr has been sacked twice all season. And the offensive line, according to PFF, hasn't allowed either one of those sacks and has been terrific. They have pedigree on that line. They have 4 first-round picks, but in this league too, quarterbacks know when they're going to get pressured. And a guy like Derek Carr, who has been around a long time, he gets rid of the ball quick. He will get rid of the ball quick. The Eagles just. For all that went wrong the other night, they had given up 15 points through 59 minutes of that game, and had played good red zone defense for a second straight week. But I don't know what happened on that last drive, but it just wasn't good enough. If they get the stop on that last drive, we're talking about they gave up 15 points, and it's a good enough day. It's a really tough assignment ahead of them this week with New Orleans. Vic better fix something. We haven't even gotten to the fact they can't stop the run yet, but there's a lot to fix here, Chris. That's why Vic gets the big money. We'll see if he can do it.
Yeah, I'll stay with you on this one. You mentioned stopping the run. That's going to be our next topic in terms of that. We look at right now, overall, I'll start with this. Overall team defense, total defense right now, the Eagles are 30th, giving up 399.5 yards per game, which is a lot, to safely say that, I'm sorry. And part of the reason why they're ranked so low is there has been their inability to stop the run. They've missed tackles. Players have been blocked one-on-one when you expect them to get double teams. To draw double teams, there's been bad pursuit angles as well, too. And it's a lot of the same issues as we saw last season. So, Bob, I'm going to ask you this. Is this unit going to turn things around, or are we just witnessing a prolonged version of last season's decline?
They better turn it around, because they don't. Forget it. The season's in the trash. I mean, there's no way it's going to be saved. Now I have seen teams over the years that were able to, correct things. The most amazing one I think I can remember ever was the 2006 Colts. They couldn't stop the run to save their lives. All season, and then they got to the postseason. I think they allowed like 40 yards a game in their 4 postseason games and won the Super Bowl. The Giants in 2007 weren't looking very good early in the season, and then all of a sudden, Steve Spagnuolo was the new defensive coordinator for them at that point. All of a sudden, it just clicked, and they became a dominant defense. I don't know if we can see that coming from the Eagles. I still think there's a ton of talent. I still think Josh Sweat's a good player. Bryce Huff's numbers are there. And Brandon Graham is still a quality rusher. Jalen Carter played out of his mind last year at the start of last season. I don't know about Jordan Davis. He needs to pick it up, but it still is a former first round pick. There's talent there. I don't know. It's going to be interesting to ask. I want to ask Vic Fangio today. It's coordinator's day. Why he thinks the tackling has been so bad. I was actually just looking a second ago. Pro Football Focus's missed tackles, and there are a ton of teams with a lot of missed tackles, including. And I wonder how much of that is the fact that these guys just don't tackle live because so many of them don't play in the preseason. So will that get better in that regard? I think there's just so much that needs to happen, but it can happen. We are 2 games into the season. Teams are never defined by 2 games in the season. I actually had a long talk yesterday with Oren Burks about the 49ers last season. They were 3-3 after 6 games, I believe. And he basically said, I said, how did you guys deal with that and turn things around when, you were supposed to be such a good team? Was there panic? He goes, nah, with good organizations, I guess they went to 5-3. They were 5-1 and then lost 2 in a row to the Vikings and Bengals. But he basically said, we didn't panic. We knew we were a good team. We got our act together. The Eagles have the type of leaders in their room to do that. They still have one of the best offensive lines, and they themselves have been able to run the ball very effectively the first 2 weeks. I thought Jalen Hurts played a terrific game on Sunday, and Saquon, was spectacular until the drop. So there are things about this team, and I know you're asking me about the defense, but I still think there are things about this team that there's reason for optimism and hope going forward.
All right, let's just switch to the other side of the ball. We look offensively, and they're going to go against this tough Saints team, and they may be doing it again without A.J. Brown, who missed the game for the injury. Like, he got injured late in the week. And during the broadcast of Monday Night Football's broadcast, it was mentioned that he could be out a couple weeks. So the Eagles have to move forward with him. And it was interesting. The Eagles ran their offense through Devontae Smith, but you saw other guys such as Grant Calcaterra and Britton Covey be utilized a lot more. Now, the one name we didn't hear as much was tight end Dallas Goedert, who finished the game with 3 catches for 38 yards. Cayden, why wasn't he utilized more, especially when we constantly hear that the offense goes through Brown, Smith, and Goddard? Yeah,
it's weird. I mean, we've been hearing that for years. And look, since the 2022 Super Bowl season, he played 12 games. He was really good that year during the regular season, and we came back in the playoffs. But, I mean, last year, that was the big thing, right? He was going to be a huge part of the offense. And look, I get he got hurt as well last year, but it never seemed like he was very involved. And that might have to do more with the dysfunction of everything that was going on last year. But you would think that they would try to do more to get him the ball. And the reason, that Sirianni talked about yesterday is, different things, kind of play out there. There was junk in the middle and stuff like that. And the Falcons obviously have some, really good safeties. Jesse Bates and Justin Simmons. So it might have been a little tougher to pass, to Goddard in the middle of the field. But I just feel like there should have been more of a game plan involving him. He was your second best weapon on Monday night. And the passing offense, although I agree with Bob earlier, I think Hurts played really well. It was lacking a lot of explosive plays. And I still think Goddard, has shown, even though with less, targets and catches over the last 2 years, that he's still a pretty explosive player. So my biggest guess is just for why is that Atlanta has some good safeties and they just feel like they couldn't really get them involved. But I don't think that's a great explanation though from Sirianni. I think they had to do a better job of getting him involved, and if they don't against the Saints, it's going to be tough because the Saints has a really good secondary too. They have 3 corners and Alontae Taylor and Lattimore and Paulson Adebo and Kool-Aid McKinnon. They have so many defensive backs and safeties like Tyrann Mathieu. I mean, they have so many different guys who can play on the inside who are going to cover the middle of the field, and I still feel like you have to find a way to get Goddard involved. 3 passes for 38 yards isn't good enough, and look, I get they were trying to get other people involved as well, like you mentioned, Chris, like Britton Covey and Grant Calcaterra, but he should be a central focus of this offense, especially if you're going to preach that the passing offense runs through him, A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. But, I mean, maybe it doesn't. I mean, in all reality, it runs through A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, and wherever the scraps are, Dallas Goedert will pick them up occasionally. And that's what it's been over the last 2 years. So I still think he's a good player. I'm not sure if he's regressed. I mean, maybe slightly, because he's missed some time, and maybe he hasn't hit the potential that we all thought he could be, but I still think he's a really good player that needs to get more touches, and that's up to Kellen Moore to find ways, whether it's quicker passes so that he can make some more plays after the catch, because I think that's been one of his strengths throughout his career, or try to stretch him more vertically. So we'll see what happens, but they need to find a way to get him involved, and if they don't next week, it's going to be just as odd.
All right, cool. Well, now we're at the run pass option of the program. We'll read what I'll do is I'll read a statement, and Bob and Katie will agree. If they agree with it, they'll run with it, and they'll explain why. And if they disagree, they'll pass on the statement, and then they'll give a reason why on that. So we're going to start with this, Bob.
All right, ready, break. I'm sorry. My old center days are getting back to me.
Okay. Well, here we go. The Eagles need to use less of the RPO and stick with more traditional play action pass concepts.
I'm going to run with that because I mostly because I think Saquon Barkley's best ability running the ball is his straight ahead downhill runner. Let him get to the line of scrimmage and make those jump cuts that he makes. He looks great running the football, and I think it seems like when he tries to go outside, that's when he's had his share of runs for losses, but where he's got smothered. I think the Eagles' offensive line blocks best when he's there. Hand the ball off and use your play action passing game off those concepts where you just hand the ball off and because teams have seen how Saquon has gouged guys, so they're going to have to respect just that straight ahead play action fake rather than the run pass option. The run pass option wasn't real popular last year. I think people do not ever want to see Devontae Smith blocking for somebody else ever again. But we see it. We're still seeing it. It's a new offensive coordinator, but we still see it at times. So I'm going to run with that. Okay,
what are you? Are you running or passing with that?
Yeah, I'm gonna stuff. I'm gonna run with it as well, like Bob. I thought about passing it because the RPO game, I think what we all saw on Monday night is that Jalen Hurts is still a pretty explosive player. Maybe did he lose a little bit? I'm not sure. I mean, it's tough to really tell with the eye test. I don't think he has. I mean, I thought he has some really good big runs in the game, and if you could take advantage of his athleticism still in the offense, I think it's a bonus. But at the same time, you can't run an RPO offense or RPO plays a ton if you're getting flagged down the field. They had 8 plays this season. I'll credit Shane Half on Twitter for putting this out. 4 of 8 of the RPO plays this season, 4 of them have been flagged for an ineligible man downfield. We saw the one early in the game with Cam Jurgens, and I mean, Chris, you were talking, man, it's a product of the offense. It's not really on the offense alignment. A lot of that is timing as well. And I just don't think it's worth it if you're having consistent penalties on those plays, and it's going to derail your offense. So I'm gonna for that reason I'm gonna run with getting rid of a lot of those plays.
Yeah, I'm going to chime in just on this real quick as well too. When I look at it, if you're going to run an RPO, make sure you don't have Barkley on the same side as a 3 receiver set, because it really kind of gives a tell. You have Barkley on like, say if you're doing it to the right, Barkley is on Hurst's right, and then you have the personnel grouping was Johnny Wilson, Devontae Smith, and Britton Covey. It just screams they're going to run. They're going to do something like that. If they're going to do that, that's cool. Just make sure you utilize the stuff off of that, like maybe a fake slant and go off the RPO. But the problem is you can't have the lineman running down the field at the same time. So if they're going to use it, just vary up the looks on it. And that's my piece on that. Next one. Cayden, run or pass? The New Orleans Saints quarterback Derek Carr has outplayed Jalen Hurts so far this season.
I'm going to run with that, but there's a caveat to it. I mean, Derek Carr has outplayed probably 30 quarterbacks in the NFL this season. You know, for everyone that thought Derek Carr was washed, including me, after what I saw last season when he played his first year with the Saints, I thought he was done. I mean, I didn't think he was a really good starter anymore. Derek Carr looks like, through 2 weeks, to be fair, so, I mean, I don't want to go overboard, but he looks like a guy that could win MVP this season in the Clint Kubiak offense. He's played incredible. I mean, he's got good weapons in Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed, and all it seems is if you give him a smart offensive coordinator with a little bit of the innovative offense, I mean, he could do something really good. I mean, he's got 443 yards, 5 touchdowns, and 1 pick. So he's been really, good with decision making as well, on top of just putting up really good numbers. And I mean, I'm sure the offensive system has helped, but yeah, I mean, yeah, he's outplayed Jalen Hurts, and I don't think that means Jalen Hurts has played bad, but Derek Carr has been one of the most intriguing stories of the NFL this year.
Bob, run or pass?
Yeah, you got to run with it. I'll correct one mistake there. Cayden said he's outplayed 30 quarterbacks in the NFL. It's 31. There's 32 teams. He's outplayed them all. His ESPN QBR is 96.2. The next closest is Kyler Murray at 91. And by the way, Jalen Hurts is high on that list at number 7 at 72.3. So, or what is it? 72.3. So he's been he's obviously in the eyes of that system played very well as well. But Derek Carr has outplayed everybody in the league, as the Saints have. They've outscored their 2 opponents 91 to 91 to very little. They've got 22 more points than the next closest team in the league. That's all a reflection of Derek Carr, his passer rating is 142.4. And he really hasn't thrown the ball that much. He's only thrown 39 passes, 30 to 39, but that's an indication of Alvin Kamara and the run offense also being just highly successful right now. He's thrown 5 touchdowns, 1 interception. His completion, what's his yards per attempt, is 11.4. Now, let's just say this. That's not going to continue. He's not going to throw an 11.4 yard clip all season. Let's also remember that the Panthers are a very bad team. I don't know what happened to the Cowboys last week. It was a disgraceful performance by them. But I will just add this one thing on my run here. The one person who I guarantee, regardless of what Derek Carr's record said right now, even if he didn't say he was the best quarterback in the league, that would have immense respect for Derek Carr would be Vic Fangio, because Vic Fangio his defenses have faced Derek Carr 8 times. They're 6-2. Carr is 6-2 against Fangio, 12 touchdowns, 4 picks, 2,173 yards, and a 105.5 passer rating. Now, on a positive note, the Fangio defenses have sacked Derek Carr 12 times, so that is proof that that Vic Fangio defenses can sack the quarterback. Anyway. That's enough.
Okay. All right. Next one. Jahan Dotson last week. He had 1 catch for 6 yards. Bob, running or passing? Jahan Dotson will have at least 3 catches this week.
I'm going to run with that. You dug into Dallas Goedert there with good reason. They need to get him the ball more, and as Nick always says, the offense, he's one of the guys the offense runs through. But they also, spend some draft capital to get Jahan Dotson here at the end of training camp, or the end of just after the preseason. I forget exactly the date, but obviously they thought he was a good player, and he's got 1 catch through 2 games, 2 targets. And right now he's playing on the outside opposite Devontae Smith with A.J. Brown being out. They need to get him the ball more. They need to get him more than 1 target. I don't know if Jalen is not comfortable with his timing with him yet, or whatever, his rapport with him yet, but that needs to that needs to improve right now, and he needs to become more of a part of the offense. This guy wasn't a great player with Commanders, and maybe was a little bit of a disappointment actually in his 2 seasons from being a first-round pick. But he had talent. He made plays. The Eagles saw firsthand. He had one of his best games against the Eagles. So I mean, it's a guy they need to get the ball to more. So I'm going to run with more than 3 catches. We'll have 3 catches with at least 3 catches. All right, let's run with
just
it.
3 catches. Okay,
let's
cool.
run with it.
Cool. Cade, what do you think?
Yeah, I'll pass on this. Just so from what I've seen so far, in the Atlanta game, I thought there was a possibility that he would get involved. And I get it's another week, but like Bob said, maybe there's just a lack of timing between him and Jalen Hurts where they don't feel comfortable. But just early in the season, I don't really see him having a big impact. I think we'll see some of the same things that we saw last week. Bretton Covey getting involved and Grant Calcaterra. Just the only hope is that Calcaterra gets fed a lot more, but I just don't see Dotson getting 3 catches. I expect him to get some targets, maybe like 1 catch, but three is a little too much for me.
All right, and the last one here, Kate, we'll start off with you. The best matchup in this game will be Lane Johnson versus Cameron Jordan.
That's tough. I'll pass, and that's a good matchup, and but I do think Lane will win that matchup at this stage of his career. I still think Lane is an elite player. Cam Jordan still a good player, but I don't know if he's elite, and I feel like Lane will do a really good job against Cam Jordan, and that won't necessarily be a problem in this game. I think the best matchup and the most critical matchup, though, is Darius Slay versus Chris Olave or whoever, Rashid Shaheed, who's on his side, because the Saints' passing offense has looked explosive as well. We just talked about Derek Carr. And look, Slay gave up that big play at the end of the Falcons game, but overall, he's played really good this year, and they're going to need him to have a lights-out game against that wide receiver core, or it's going to be a tough one. They're going to already probably struggle to stop the run. They're going to have to stop the pass. So Slay versus Olave and Rashid and that group of Saints wide receivers, just generally the Eagles DBs versus the Saints wide receiver, I think it's the best matchup and the most critical one.
Bob, what are you doing, running or passing?
I'm going to pass on it too. I'm just going to, and I'm going to go more globally here. Just say, we spent a lot of time talking about the Eagles' defensive line and getting pressure and stopping the run. And I'm just going to say the Eagles' defensive line against the Saints' offensive line, which is supposed to be a weakness. All right. Well, the Eagles, obviously, it hasn't been a fun week for them, losing the way they lost, missing a chance to become the only team in the division to start 2-0. And it certainly has been a miserable couple of weeks for the defensive line. Well, this is a chance for the Eagles as a team and the defensive line as a unit to show, hey, you know what? We're not as bad as you think we are. If they can get some sacks this week and get themselves and contain the run and contain Alvin Kamara in some way, obviously he's going to probably have his share of touches. He always does. But if they can, if they can come through with a good defensive performance on the defensive line, all this talk about, hey, these guys aren't any good will go away in a hurry. It'll go, they'll be, the narrative will be so much different next week. We won't even recognize it.
Nice. And we're reaching our final segment of this show here, and thank everybody for listening through to this. Here's the guide for a 2-minute drill. Now, each of these guys will have 2 minutes to answer this question I'm about to ask them. If they don't finish, they'll hear this whistle. And then as the time's up, and they're out. So that's it. So first question, we're going to start with you, Bob. The Eagles will win or lose Sunday because go.
They will win because Jalen Hurts. I'm going to say they're going to lose because let me start over here. They will lose because New Orleans is a brutal place to play. They're really a red-hot team right now. I've covered games there. My ears, I felt like were broken by the time I left that place. The Saints are a really good team. It's a tough situation for the Eagles. I don't see them going in there and winning that game.
Wow, that was quick. All right, cool. All right.
That's based on having been in there so many times in the past. I was in there right after Katrina that year. after the hurricane, and it might have been a year later. I don't know, but the place is just insane. I mean, it's a really difficult place to play. And I just think that the Saints are playing out of their minds right now. It's just a tough assignment for the Eagles. I don't see them winning the game.
All right, cool. Cayden, your same question. The Eagles will win or lose Sunday because, and go.
The Eagles are going to lose for a few reasons to the Saints. The number one is I don't think the pass rush is going to be able to get after Derek Carr. And that's not me saying that the pass rush can't come around eventually, but this specific matchup is not going to be great. And what's kind of surprised me is because coming into this year, I kind of mapped this down as a game for the pass rush to do well because not a believer in the talent up front on the Saints with Trevor Penning and Cesar Ruiz and guys like that and a first-round pick in Talisa Fuaga. But this system with Clint Kubiak, I mean, Derek Carr gets the ball out fast. It's very efficient. I mean, he doesn't hold the ball very long, so you're not going to have a ton of time to get after the quarterback in general. Kind of same with all the Shanahan systems. You look at Miami and even San Fran doesn't have the best offensive line in the world. The Rams, before all the injuries, didn't have even for a guy like McVay, kind of along that trade, they don't have necessarily the best offensive lines, but they get the ball out so fast, it negates a pass rush. And if that happens, Derek Carr is going to have a field day. And the number two thing is the wide zone run scheme. Atlanta ran it. Milton Williams talked to me about that yesterday in the locker room, how the Eagles haven't seen that before. And they were able to, have a lot of different cutback opportunities with Bijan Robinson because the Eagles haven't seen that before. And to stop that type of run scheme, everyone has to be on the same page. Everyone has to stay in the same gap. And one guy doesn't. It causes big runs to break out. And we saw that against Atlanta. A week later, I'm not sure if the Eagles' run defense is going to be fixed within 4 or 5 days of preparing for this game. And if the Saints saw what Atlanta did, and you have a guy like Alvin Kamara, who just scored 5 touchdowns against the Cowboys, 3 on the ground as well for 115 yards, I think it's going to be really difficult for this Eagles offense to stop New Orleans, who's been leading number one scoring offense in the NFL this season. This game could get ugly, in my opinion, if the Eagles offense, especially without A.J. Brown. So
you just let a Kirk Cousin-like drive and left 8 seconds left on the clock. So good job on that, too. Nice. All right, guys, thank you very much for joining us, and thank you all for listening.
I'll take the loss this week, but I'll be back next week. I'll be back. Next week is mine, Steele. You're in trouble.
Well, thank you all for listening. Make sure to check out the coverage for this upcoming game against the Saints or NJ.com/Eagles. We'll have every angle that we possibly can about this upcoming game, win or lose, and seeing what happens from there. So for Bob and Cayden, I'm Chris. Everybody have a good one. See ya.